Welcome to Smoke and Mirrors. 4,000 black people shot, over 700 killed. Where's this at, Kenny?
So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about black on black violence. We're going to talk about it from a verbal violence and physical violence. We're going to talk about violent crime statistics in our community and in our smaller communities and in our country. And then I think we're going to talk about whether or not there's a causal relationship between corporal punishment in our community and violent crime in our community. And today, let's also talk a little bit about vaccines.
You got to talk about the vaccine.
Yeah, they still pumping those vaccines at us, and the COVID situation ain't what they are making it out to be when you look at the data. And there is a causal relationship as well between folks' health before they contract COVID and mortality rate for COVID. So we're going to talk a little bit about some data that we ran across this week from the Department of Health and Human Services as it specifically relates to our community and how that can affect our survivability of COVID and whether or not we need these doggone vaccines that they made in the microwave last week. So, but Chicago, yes. Man, what's going on? We got kids getting killed in Buckhead here in Atlanta. We got parties here in Atlanta. We got 4,000. We got 700 and almost 800 people killed in Chicago by gunfire this year.
Yeah,
and if I'm not mistaken, that's up 50% from last year.
Yeah.
How the hell are you shooting more people in a damn lockdown? You can't even buy bullets. I'm trying to buy bullets in Atlanta. I can't even buy bullets. What they shooting each other with?
They all been sent to Chicago. Check this.
Apparently.
More than 10,000 guns have been recovered from the streets in Chicago. So when you recover 10,000 guns, how many guns are really out there?
Right.
If that many people still getting killed, but they recovered 10,000, where are these guns coming from? They're not making guns on the west side of Chicago.
Grandma, where they go? I thought the recovered guns. Grandma giving them guns up, bringing them get the toys at Toys R Us. But yeah, we ain't making the guns. How these guns?
No, we ain't making the guns.
Community, right? They run around the corner and go buy these guns. But the big question is, I don't mind people having guns, right? This is a country where you better have a damn gun. That's just how it goes, right? The government, this society was built with the understanding that if the citizens are not armed, the government will punk you out and pimp you out, period. That's why they got the Second Amendment for us to be able to have these guns, right? First Amendment is our right to say what we got to say, and the Second Amendment is our right to protect our ability to say what we got to say and change what we need to change. So I'm not one who's opposed to gun ownership or access to guns. The same guns that the Army and the police have, the community should be able to get as well. The problem is, why do we use the guns that we use in the way that we use them? And why do we use them against each other in that way? It's just, we represent such a small segment of the American society. I mean, I think
13%
of the country's total number of people, but we're half of the murder victims. And we commit 90-something% of the murders of ourselves. So basically we're half of the murderers in this country.
So Kenny, we live in a society that if you said that as a conservative talk show host, people saying hashtag ban this guy, hashtag he's racist for stating facts. So along the same vein of that, why is it if a black man is killed by a white officer, the hashtags come, people are able to organize, thousands of people are behind saying black man killed, why are the police killing black folks, and they get behind and say this has to stop. But 4,000 black folks can get shot in Chicago 98% of the time by other black people. Where's the outcry at that point? Where are the leaders, black leaders? Where are they each time? When in Chicago every weekend, anywhere from 45 to 85 people get shot every weekend.
Every weekend.
Yeah.
You can bank on it. Like
where's the outcry? Yeah.
Say what?
No. So where's the outcry for that? It becomes. Are we desensitized to it because it's expected now? Do people not care because it's black violence? But again, one cop can shoot a black man, and the entire black community in the country is behind. We need to stop this violence by police killing black men. So I'm just saying, that same energy that the hashtag to come along with when that happens, we got to also put that energy behind when we are shooting and kill each other.
I mean, we were talking about that months ago with Black Lives Matter. It's like, where's Black Lives Matter when black folks are killing black folks? And then why do we demonize folks who point that out, that I don't care who kills somebody that I love. I don't care if they kill themselves. I'm angry as hell at the person who kills somebody I love. Period.
Right. Yeah.
We put all of this energy towards an issue that is the overwhelming teeny weeny minority of the big picture of the whole pie. Meaning, such a small percentage of us are killed by police, and so many more of us are killed by one another. Why is it acceptable? I didn't say encourage, like we cheer it on, but acceptable means that we accept it. We ain't doing nothing about it. Why is it acceptable that we kill each other in these rates? I mean, but it's unacceptable when somebody else kills it. So, and I think it's unacceptable both ways, is the point.
Yes.
But where is that energy is your question. We had, I think in the United States, 400 to 500 African Americans were killed by police officers this year in the whole country. In Chicago, over 700 African Americans were killed by each other. So that in and of itself is a huge problem. The question that I think needs to be asked is, or answered is why? Why? What is it about our community that we feel that it is acceptable and appropriate to condone and to not snitch on and to hide out when these murders happen? We had a little girl in Atlanta just driving Christmas shopping with her family, and she's shot in the head and killed.
Yeah.
What?
Very sad. Very sad.
And it took 2 weeks, a week and change, for somebody to find out who did this. That's unacceptable. You know, but that's our community. But you know, that's because we don't know. No snitching. But as soon as we see a cop abusing us, the cameras come out.
Get your phone.
We snitching before anybody asks. Exactly. So, and that's the right response to it. Matter of fact, some might argue the right response is, if there's 20 of y'all watching it and 2 of them doing it, stop them from doing it. So that's an appropriate response.
Yeah.
But the response should never be that we allow it to happen. But why do we allow it to happen? Why do we allow it to happen? We're go ahead.
A city like Chicago, they will quickly blame. They'll put a political spin on it. So if there's a weekend of a lot of violence, they will say the mayor is not doing her job because she's not keeping the streets safe. Right. I'm sorry. Did she send these people out to go shoot people? So it's easy to point the blame in the wrong direction. Say these cops are not doing their job because people are getting killed. When will the blame land where it should actually be?
Well, it's what is to blame. I don't think it's a who is to blame as much as it is a what is to blame, right? Same thing is happening here in Atlanta as well, by the way, with the city, a lot of the people in the city turning on Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and trying to blame her because she's looking into ways to better utilize police force and police and community safety funding in ways that we don't overburden the police with having to be counselors and psychologists and everything else. Go handle crime, man. Go get these violent people and go get them. You mean, it's not lost on me that police officers have a job where you have to wear a bulletproof vest and carry a gun, and your wife and kids pray that you come home every night. That's not every night. That'll affect everything that you do and every way that you act. But the mayor is not to blame. When in our community, though, just as a little side note, when they're doing the data on where these shootings are happening and who's shooting each other, man, these are people coming into Atlanta from out of town who are doing all this violence here, and that's because the governor opened it up, but then they turn around and blame mayor, and it's the same situation in the country. It's always the mayor's fault. So what is happening in these communities? What's happening in our community that internally, not what are folks doing to us? We know what they're doing to us. What are we doing to each other? How are we responding to what's being done to us that's allowing us, or maybe perhaps even causing us, to treat our own people, our relatives, our neighbors' relatives in that way, where we're abusive, we're violent, we are using, seems to me, that there is a relationship between heavy-handed corporal punishment and violence in the community. Study after study shows that of children who are spanked, that spanking is a short-term fix, meaning it stops the behavior right now, but it doesn't correct the behavior long term. And furthermore, studies also show that children who are not beaten, spanked. And there's a difference.
We'll talk about beatings because there are some beatings.
That's right. Yeah. So children who receive corporal punishment from their mother after the age of 5 years old are more likely to exhibit anger management and aggression control issues. They're less likely, they perform more poorly on vocabulary tests at 9 years old. So there was a study done by, about like 2,000 families, and they interviewed them at 3 years old, 5 years old, and then again at 9 years old to check in, right? And what they found was that about 50% of the moms and about a third of the dads were using corporal punishment on the kids at 3 years old. And then they found that the children who were at 5 years old still getting spanked after 5 years old by their moms, and it was specific to the mothers, that the ones that were still getting spanked by their mothers, receiving corporal punishment from their mothers, performed lower on vocabulary tests and tested higher than normal in inability to control their aggression and to use as in violence as a tool to get what they want. So when you see that, and then there's also data as well that shows that it affects the gray matter in the frontal cortex that allows for executive thinking in children, that is impacted from corporal punishment. So when you look at what causes violence in the community, what are those people doing, and the percentage at which our community loves to beat our children. I mean, I don't know any other community that talks about beating their kids like we do.
All right, Kenny. All right, so put a pin in that. I agree and disagree. So let's go back to the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we were raised. So I believe back then, corporal punishment ran rapid in our communities, in our homes, because whether it was an extension cord or it was a belt, we got whooped or beat. It happened a lot.
Yeah.
Did we act out and become violent and shoot and kill people? So if you look at it, I believe, I mean, that's been historically. You ask your aunt about how her mother treated her when she was a kid. Mm-hmm. She got whoopings, beatings back in the 60s, 70s.
Where did we learn that from?
Right. So I got you. So come back to that. But my point is, this spike in this gun violence, the killing, that was not happening in the 70s. Or the spike occurred more so in the 80s into the 90s with the violence of actually black on black killing. So can we say that the corporal punishment at home by getting whooped by your mom caused us to be more violent, when in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, that's how black people grew up. But those people are now 50 and 60 years old, and they're not the one committing this violence that we're talking about. So do you think these children now are getting whooped and beat the same way? Would you say like we did in the 70s? Is it safe? Because a lot of these moms are 25 and 30 years old. Are they taking out belts and extension cords like Big Mama did back in 1974 and whooped everybody? But again, the family structure was different then as far as how things were structured in the family. There was still whether the male was in the house or not, it was still a family situation, not a 28-year-old raising 4 kids, more so what you would see today. So are you saying that the violence in the black community is, the corporal punishment is more prevalent now than it was back 30, 40 years ago?
Well, I don't know that corporal punishment is more or less prevalent versus where it was, but more or less prevalent versus who. The data that I'm looking at shows from the CDC shows that we're 3 times more likely to use corporal punishment against our children than white families are.
3 times more.
3 times more likely to use corporal punishment against our children than Hispanic families are. We are 10 times more likely to use corporal punishment against our children than Asian parents are. Now, The Asian community is outperforming every community in this country.
Yeah.
And they don't beat their kids like that. So what is it about beating and success that we seem to think that the two go together? Because if that's the case, if beating led to success, because how many times have you heard, man, I wouldn't have been nothing if it wasn't for my mama whooping on my butt, man. I wouldn't have had this job. I didn't go to jail. I didn't get on drugs. I didn't have any gridlock, and I'm still here and I'm succeeding. Man, if it wouldn't have been for my mother whooping me, I don't know if that would have happened. If that's the fact, if that's the case, if there was a true linkage between beatings from our mamas and success, we'd be the most successful people.
Everybody would be.
we wouldn't have anybody in prison. We would have the most money of everybody on the planet. So there is no relationship between success and beating these children. In fact, the data shows that beating your children and their aggression and violence, they're tied. Now, that study was done over several years. Over the last like 10, 12, 15 years, these studies are coming out. So in the 70s, we didn't have those studies. In the 70s, we don't have the same access to data. We didn't have the computers.
That's true.
Information. Yeah. But I would suggest to you, though, that the violence that we commit on each other is learned behavior from slave masters. Because if you go back and you look at African cultures prior to slavery, you don't find a lot of documented history of African culture beating their children. That's a European thing, because Europeans believe that children are born in sin and that we gotta beat the devil out of our kid. And if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. That's from their logic. And so that logic became colonialized or institutionalized into communities where they enslaved people or just took over the whole country and brought that nonsense with them. And so now we commit the violence against our own that they don't even commit the violence against their own that way. These are who taught us that. And they don't beat their children like that. You don't even see, it's just not something that is as prevalent in other communities as it is in ours. And then the violence isn't as prevalent in their communities as it is in ours. Yes, white people commit 80% of the crimes against white people. Yes, Asian people commit 80% of the crimes against Asian people. Yes, Black people commit 80, 90% of the crimes against Black people. But Asian people aren't committing 50% of the crimes. White people aren't committing the violent crimes against themselves at a disproportionate rate to their percentage in the country as a whole.
Right.
13% of the country, and we're 50% of the murder victims.
Right.
And where is that coming from? And we got to figure something out. I think mothers can be very helpful in this. This isn't to bash mothers at all. It's a hard job being a single mother. But at a certain point though, right? Do you have complete control when you have to use physical violence against a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, 12-year-old? Why is it that the Black body, why do we think that in order to get a Black body to comply, that we have to use violence?
That goes straight back to slavery, as you were saying.
Exactly right. So that's a learned behavior that we need to get out of, because it's destructive and it trains our children in a way that says that violence is acceptable if somebody's not doing what you think they're supposed to do. How do you get somebody to conform? Beat them. If we go back to Color Purple, beat them. No, you shouldn't get beat by the cops. You shouldn't get beat by your spouse. And you shouldn't be getting beat up and abused by a misguided parent. I mean, what do you do to a child's psyche to have lash marks on their back from switches? And how hard is that? What are you doing to their mind? Make them go pick their own switch. That whole bullshit. And I'm not dogging folks for being misguided and doing the wrong thing. I mean, we used to eat the potato skins thinking that was healthy, and then you learn better and you stop, you move certain things out of your diet. I suggest that we may need to move in-home violence against our children out of our parenting diet and try some other ways.
Kenny, I completely agree with that. But to the point you mentioned previously, I know there was no documented as far as computers and being able to research data. But at the end of the day, we know for a fact in the 70s and 80s, there were not 4,000 people getting shot in a city like Chicago back then. We had guns back then. Yeah. So the correlation between the violence at home and the increase in the violence that we see in our community, I see it, but I don't see it. So I mean, so there's other factors. So there's the access to guns.
More
so
people.
It's so easy to get. That wasn't like that in the 70s.
Yeah, more,
back in the
people.
70s, huh?
More people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Atlanta didn't have millions of people in the 70s.
Right.
It was a small town. So
right.
More people.
But the access and availability. So having a gun in the 70s was like, okay, wow, that guy has a gun. So now you have 14-year-olds walking around Chicago with guns.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of factors that contribute.
The question is not, again, whether or not we have access to guns. It's why are we using guns? So yeah, there was fewer deaths in the 70s and the 60s. I would agree. But would you say that there was no gun, no gang violence, no knife fights? When you look at Good Times from the 70s, you had the disciples and the warlords and the.
Come on, Jive Turkey. You want some of this?
That's what I'm saying. It's not like we can't go back and look. It's just they didn't have access to the tools to do the damage that they can do now. But it doesn't mean that the violence wasn't happening in our community.
This was the violence back then.
That's exactly right. So folks survived it. But now it's a different ballgame. And I would suggest as well that we've gone away from that. There was more self-love going on back then as well, more self-empowerment going back then as well. We were calling each other brother and sister back there as well, as opposed to bitches and hoes and N-words and all this other stuff. So, there's all these different feats that come in. The question though is, we can hypothesize all day long about what's causing it, what's not causing it. I just look at the data. Numbers don't lie. 2 + 2 = 4 every single time. It's not an opinion. So the question then becomes, is there any relationship between these data points, the violence that we commit amongst each other and the violence that we're trained to receive from folks closer to us than the ones we're saying we shouldn't be killing? More kids get killed by their parents every year than get killed by cops. That's
wow. So, but and that is not a nationality or a race-based comment or numbers. That's across. That's not an African American community. That's in general across the board, right?
How do you mean?
So you're saying that there's more people, more kids are killed by their parents than police officers, right? Yeah. That's in general. That's the entire population.
Correct.
Okay.
And no other, and as well, right? No other society is as afraid of police officers as African Americans, right? So I use that just because that's the big boogeyman out there. And if we all agree and acknowledge that everyone that those boogeymen kill is one too many, then it's also back to the earlier point. How come we're not in an uproar?
That same energy,
right. So any child that gets killed. And what they have found in that data of parents killing their children is that those parents started out whooping them, and then it went to extension cords, and then it went to other things until at the end of the day, that didn't work anymore. And now they ultimately lead to killing their child. And, Marvin Gaye got killed by his father, man, at 40 something, at 40, on
yeah, 42, yeah.
So it's not like it ends. It just, parents don't, when you use physical abuse to get your point across, you're not using something else, and you're not growing skills in other ways. And another point, right? African Americans, we are more likely to allow and to agree with the idea of allowing schools to use corporal punishment against our children, even though the data shows that the corporal punishment is used on African American kids at a rate 5 times that of other races for the same offense. So our whole society is built on, is built around the acceptance that African American children need violence committed against them or else. And then that translates into African American adults needing violence committed against them. And that's, cops are trained to think that way. Right. They do it, and we're trained to think that way, so we do it. How do we stop that thinking? We got to stop doing it ourselves.
So let's talk about your thoughts on the psychological reaction of, just say, a young boy being beat by his mother. Is that any different than a mom? And again, our children are adults. So I assume, basically, you're saying that right now, parents are still whooping their kids with belts. So I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm sure it is. But because you hear people say, "I'm gonna beat his ass when he get home," and excited about it.
Right.
So,
Right.
but at the same.
Yeah, I think there's a different impact on boys when they are spanked, when they're beaten by their mother than their father. And I think there's a different impact on girls when they're beaten by their father versus their mother.
Ooh, okay. That's a nugget right there.
So I think that it misinforms what it is you should expect from your life partner. If you're trained in receiving violence and diminished and being diminished in that way, and to receive that from your mother as a boy, it wouldn't surprise me if the data shows that those boys who were beaten grow up in the, have difficult marriages. What's the divorce rate and the marriage rate in our community? Why is that?
The marriage rate is I think it's fewer. So I think you probably can find the data, but I think the percentage or the numbers as far as Black people getting married is less than half of what it was back in the 60s. So you said something that really got my attention. So you said having the dad in the house. So I would say that if it is a 2-parent household, I would think it would be less corporal punishment. So let's view it like this. So you got a single mom. She's 26 years old. She got 3 kids by herself.
Yeah.
Trying to make all this, trying to just juggle all this and make stuff work.
Right.
Life is hard.
Right.
She get frustrated.
Yeah.
Taquanvius is getting in trouble in school every day. She got this going on. She's trying to make ends meet, and she tired. I'm gonna whoop his ass. Yeah. When he get home. Right. So I would think, first off, how small of a percentage 2-parent Black households are there right now? We had that in the 60s and 70s. So I would think. So I would think if it's a 2-parent household, I think it would be less corporal punishment, because now the mother ain't trying to do everything. There's a dad that can help balance all this, and she doesn't have all that on her shoulders. What do you think? So your point about more marriages, I think 70% of children before desegregation grew up in 2-parent households. Yes. And I think 70% of African-American children today grow up in single-parent households, so it flipped. Huge. But yeah, that does create an additional burden. But if dad was raised with the same idea that you're supposed to whoop a kid's ass to get him to comply, then dad and mom both think they're doing the right thing. Who doesn't want to do the right thing by their children? Especially a couple that's trying to stick throughout a tough marriage and going through the ups and downs of marriage and raising children and not making 6 figures and still struggling to make bills, ends meet. You got 2 people in the house. America requires 2 jobs anyway. So mom still has to, and dad still has to work if you want to live a comfortable middle-class lifestyle. So both parents are now stressed, not just one. Right? So it's not like it was in the 60s and 70s where if dad was at work and mom was at home and she didn't have to stress. No, mom has to work either way with dad in the house most of the time. So I don't know that there's necessarily, but I would imagine though that that theoretically there probably would be less, because there'd be less triggers to violence, because maybe I don't fly into a rage as quickly. But when you've been groomed into thinking that that's the appropriate response to a child misbehaving, then neither parent's gonna see anything wrong with it. So you might be doubling up on the number of doggone whoopings. I mean, look at how Devin was portrayed. The kids were. Yeah. How would you feel if you went to touch your daughter, she jumped like that? But I can't. But look at the picture behind me. Why should a kid ever experience that? What does that do long term to them? Right. So maybe I need to research what's happening currently, but I don't know why it just, in my mind, it seems like these kids today, they ain't really running from their mama like that. They gonna stand up and talk trash, where the mom is like, this boy is 12 and he's trying to buck up at me right now. Because the spanking stopped working, and that's when the kids that get killed. That's exactly what we didn't do that in the 70s. I don't care if you was 18 and 6 feet tall. Your great grandmama could say something. And it was okay. Wrong. So if that was a successful if that was a best practice to leverage, utilize in parenting, right? You would think then that we were performing better in the 70s and the 80s from a death rate, infant mortality rate, prison, incarceration rate, violent crime statistics, rate
murder, everything. Were we doing better then, or are we doing the same now? We're still number one in all the bad categories.
Yeah.
We were number one in all the bad categories then. We're number one in all the bad categories now. We had the worst unemployment then. We got the worst unemployment now. We had the worst, lowest education then. Now the Hispanic men have a lower education than the average African American man, or African American community as a whole. But that's just because they're new to the country. But outside of the brand new folks to the country who don't speak the language, we have the lowest education still. So
and they are employed.
Huh?
Those Hispanic men have jobs, by the
That's
way.
right.
You mentioned
Yeah.
they're working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And they can live amongst each other in a communal sense. They can come here without speaking the language of the country and know that they're safe amongst their own people. They don't have the same murder rates that we do. They don't have the same.
Not at all.
It starts in childhood. It starts with a respect for the kid as a human being. Respect their spirit, not their physical body. I mean, maybe we have lost that piece of understanding that we are a vehicle, a vessel that a spirit lives within. And this is just a tool for us to get around in this environment. But the mind and the spirit are two different things. And so when you go to break the body, what are you doing to the spirit as well?
Right.
And you're not thinking about what you're doing. And most of the time, when you think about corporal punishment, it's a reaction. It's a what? It's not a thought out consequence. It's an immediate reaction that stops a behavior right now, but teaches a lesson that creates another behavior down the road in the form of violence and aggression and limiting speech, limiting vocabulary. Think about the impact of how frustrated a person gets when they can't think of the words to express what they're thinking, right? So if I can't think of the words to get it off my chest, how do I ever get it off my chest? And if there's a link between beating a kid and the number of words that they can actually use and understand, then you're further causing the frustration, which is being layered on top of training them to be violent. So I'm frustrated, and I've been trained to be violent, and trained to be violent against each other. Because when they're watching TV, they see the kids, I hate you, Dad. You get on my nerves, you big fat bully. And why is Jimmy talking to me that way? We're trained to look at the other society not being
TV. What TV shows are you watching? Come on, I can't believe
the Goldbergs, for example.
Okay, all right, go, man.
The Goldbergs, for example. You watch it and you watch the behavior and the things that those kids did is things that Michael and JJ and Thelma would have been like, whoa, I didn't say that to Daddy. Why? Why should you be afraid of physical violence being committed against you in your house? If physical violence being committed against you is acceptable in the home,
in the safe place,
in the street. That's right.
Home is a safe place.
If it's acceptable in the house, how come it's unacceptable in the street? That's all I'm saying. You know, and so I think we can do our community a great service if we learn other ways other than physical violence. You know, why are we beating a 2-year-old? Think about that, right? Why are half of the parents using corporal punishment against somebody who ain't even 3? That's what the data shows. So if half of the moms are using corporal punishment against someone who's not 3, think about what that 2-year-old is going through. The whole world is encapsulated inside of 2 years. That's alpha to omega for them, right? That very small environment. And during that time, we train them that it's cute. Poo-poo on yourself. Oh, look at the little poo-poos he made. Oh, look at that. And that's cute, right? If they cry for something, oh, give the baby the pacifier. Oh, give the baby the bottle. That's how they learn to communicate with us, right? And then suddenly at 2 years old, it's over. Change your life. Now if you poop on yourself, you in trouble. It's nasty. Now if you cry for something, that's against the rules. It's like, wait a minute. We just had this thing. We just worked this out. My whole life, forever. I cried and you gave me. I pooped and you cleaned it. Now the rules change and I get whooped. I'm getting hit for crying over stuff. Shut up before I give you something to cry about. What?
Yeah. So what does that mean?
You see what I'm saying? So we train violence into our children at a rate that's 3 times that of those who are most violent to us, in our opinion, and 10 times that to those who are deemed to be most successful in our country, the Asian community. They ain't beating their kids like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kenny, I think we can do 2 hours on this topic alone. So let me just close on this before we go to the next subject. At the end of the day, if you trace everything back, the absence of the Black father in the home is the common denominator to so many problems in our communities. These same women.
Let's talk about this point for a couple minutes. Let's talk about Black father role for a couple minutes. Keep going. All
right. So just based on that. So this single mother that you said that's doing this, and she, she's whooping her 2-year-old. So if she's 23, 4, 5, 6, she was born in the 90s. Statistically, probably didn't have a dad in the family, right? So she grew up in a situation where she didn't have a father there to show her how she should be treated, to show her how a woman should be treated by a man. So she found out from dudes in the street. So that's why I'm going back to how things, so yes, kids got their butts whooped and beat in the 60s and 70s, but there was a man in the house. So if there was a whoop, see back then, a man could look at them kids and say, go sit down somewhere. Because they know, like, oh, so daddy said something. I don't want to get a whooping.
But what you did was still violent.
Now, though. There is no, a man isn't there like, y'all better sit y'all ass down if you get a whooping. Right. That's not happening now.
But if that's what the man is there doing, see, my argument is this. Yes, we need the man in the house, but we don't need that behavior from the man. That's not why the children are performing better, because the man is doing that. It's just the man's presence that's all that's needed.
Yes.
Balance is all that's needed.
Especially
he doesn't need to be scaring the heck out of everybody.
What? Yeah, so having that man in the household to show this young lady how it is to have a man in the house that runs the house, that will protect you and show you how to be treated, because she sees, to show her, she sees how her mom is treated. So now when she's out there as an adult now, she knows, okay, so this is how I deserve to be treated. I will not settle for less. But if she never had that or saw it, she just know how to be treated by the dude she dated when she got to high school. So I'm saying the common denominator in a lot of the problems in our community is not having that father there. And that's much more prevalent. Like you said, that's 70% flipped since, what was it, early 70s or 60s?
Late 60s, yeah, early 60s.
So that changes everything.
Neglect is a form of abuse, right? If you neglect a child and you don't nurture them, and you don't plant seeds in their mental garden that's beneficial for them long term, then that's another form of abuse that you're training them in, so that they know they are trained to feel like they come in last. They are trained to feel like it's appropriate to ignore what it is that's important to me. It's important to put me as at the bottom of the barrel. And therefore, when we see statistics that show us living at the bottom of the barrel in all of the health and welfare statistics that you can think of in this country, we're there and we accept it. Why? Because we were trained in it. We were born into it. And now we have an entire generation that thinks that way and behaves that way. And to that point, right? I talk to young men all the time. Would you fight, pit bull for your kid? Man, I'd fight a bear for my kid. If your kid fell in the shark tank, would you get, man, I'd jump into a shark tank to save my kid. But you won't deal with the mom for your kid. You won't fight no dog. You won't fight no dog either. You ain't gonna do nothing. You're gonna do the same thing for your kid like everybody did when they saw our brother getting strangled out there by the cops in Minneapolis, man. So that's the facts. That's the facts. That's what we actually doing. Yeah, we need to stick around, but at the same time, we need to operate and comport ourselves in ways that's conducive to that. When we promote just how are babies made? Let's just go back to that. Babies are made from screw. Everybody knows that part. So when our whole art scene, our whole music scene rather, our whole cultural what's hip is all about sex. When the woman of the year is woman of the year because she sung a song about her wet ass pee.
Yeah.
What are we promoting to our children and to our young women? Sex.
Yeah.
And so so now you're going to have increased pregnancies. That's just part of it.
Yeah.
You have a lot of sex, I'm not saying that makes people whores or anything of that nature. I'm not judging what people do, but we know that the consequences of drunk sex is babies. So
Yeah.
if we keep going down that lane, we're gonna keep having more babies, and that's not maybe necessarily a problem. Maybe some might argue that we need to have more babies. Some might argue that we got too many babies that's not getting out of Planned Parenthood. Some might argue that the fact that in cities like in communities like Harlem, there's more Black babies aborted than live births.
Right.
Here, more
Right.
Black babies
That's crazy.
Than
Say
in a
that again. Say that again about Harlem. That's crazy.
So it's not just Harlem. Harlem is just one. There are many Black communities around the country where you have more abortions by Black women than live births by Black women. And I'm not trying to dog Black women in this at all. I'm just talking about where that data is from, because that's not happening in other communities. But Black babies, more Black babies are aborted than born in many of our large African-American communities. I would bet that if you looked at a city like Atlanta or like Chicago and pulled up the number of African-American live births and the number of African-American abortions, they will be running neck and neck.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be 10-to-1 live births to abortions like you're gonna find in the Hispanic community, like you're gonna find in the Asian community, and it's not gonna be 3-4-to-1 like you're gonna find in the white community. It's almost gonna be doggone 1-to-1 in the African American community. So for every baby that's born, there's another baby that wasn't. There was a billboard many years ago that said the most dangerous place for an African American baby is in the mother's womb. Now you can argue whether or not it's a baby when it's in the womb. But that's beside the point.
Yeah. The show. Yeah.
The most dangerous place for an African American life, let's say, is in the mother's womb. And I'm not saying that women don't have the right to choose. I think a woman should have the right to choose. I think as well, men should have the right to choose to opt out of parenthood as well. Why? How come women can say, you know what? I got drunk last night. I got a baby. I don't want to be stuck with this dude this guy with the father for 18 years. I don't want my husband to find out that I'm pregnant by somebody else. I don't want whatever. I don't want my school to mess up. I don't want half of my check going up. I don't want none of that stuff. I'm going to go down and terminate this pregnancy. I'm going to opt out of parenthood. I think men should be able to opt out of parenthood.
How's that work, Kenny? How's that work?
Just give the baby up for adoption to the mama. I can give the baby up to adoption for a stranger and I don't have to pay no money. So how come I can't give the baby up to adoption to the mama? And I got, if you allowed to abort.
That's a whole nother show right there.
Right, if you're allowed to abort at 6 months, I should be able to opt out at 5 months. Like, you know, and the argument is always, you should have used more responsibility and discretion. That's the same argument that the pro-lifers use about anti-abortion, but we're digressing. We're talking about—
Yes, we digress.
Black life, and I'm not encouraging people to get people pregnant.
Not at all.
That's not at all. I got 3 children, never disappeared on one of them. I'm just saying, if this is right, then that's also right, and if that's wrong, this is wrong too. Then it just is what it is. So don't say one is right, one is wrong, one is wrong, one is right. They're both the same if you ask, right? So. But if the number one, the most dangerous place is an African American womb for a baby, you know, that's telling on where it is. Why do we move out of African American communities? Because the most dangerous community to live in is an African American community. As soon as Black people get some money to move out, we're gone. We don't want to live around each other. Look, the data shows it. So fathers are needed. The data all shows that when a father is not in the picture, and I've compared it, fathers in the picture, single parents, single parent moms, single parent dads. With single parent moms, the suicide rates, the high school dropout rates, the violent crime rates, everything bad is even worse.
Yes.
But do you know what was interesting?
What's that?
There's not a lot of data about it because it's not a lot of numbers. But when you look at those same statistics on households where you're growing up with a single father, you don't have the same mortality rates. You don't have the same incarceration rates. You don't have the same violent crime rates. You don't have the same high school dropout rates. You don't have the same teen pregnancy rates when they grow up with single fathers. So I say that not to say that fathers are better than mothers. I say that to say that we bring something to the table that nobody else can bring.
Right.
Father's energy, that protection. We not only protect our kids physically, but there's a spiritual protection that we put over them by being in their lives. And we have to get back to that. If you mess around and get somebody pregnant that you shouldn't have, you're still stuck, man.
Yeah. So I think I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying they need to be there. We need to be there for our
Right.
kids. Period.
So we agree. So at the end of the day, we agree that if that male, if that father is in somewhere in the equation, things are going to be better.
Yeah.
And especially so your point is on steroids. If it's a single parent father, that household is going to be right because he's doing everything. So
Yeah.
I think that is again the common denominator for so many issues that are perilous for our community. So as it relates to communities and things that are happening in our community, COVID,
Yeah, man.
vaccine.
Look,
What
man,
you gonna do, Kenny? What you gonna do?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do right there. I'm a math person, man.
You thinking about it? Was you trying to decide?
No, I already know. First off, see, people, family, friends, most of the people that's looking at this is just people that we know, that we care about.
Right now.
But y'all have to please look into this. This is a technology that has never been used on humans before. Cancer's been around for how long? The common cold has been around for how long, right? You got diabetes been around for how long? They don't have a cure for that. But in a year, you come
less
up
than
with
a year
cure for COVID? That's
less than a year.
Off. And they're using a different type of technology. They're not injecting you with the virus. They're not doing like they do with most other immunizations where they inject the live virus into you so your body builds up the antibodies and attacks it and then has now been programmed to defeat it.
Right.
That's when you're immune to something. This virus is not, this vaccination doesn't make you immune to it. What it does is, if I'm understanding it correctly, it trains your body. They give your body a version of something that looks like something that occurs when you get COVID, but they don't give you actual COVID, so that your body turns around and creates a cell structure on its own that looks like COVID, and then your body attacks that. So basically, that's an autoimmune deficiency. That's what that is. When your body creates something and your body attacks it.
Right.
I'm not playing with that. Are you kidding me? What happens if my body starts to attack unintended lung cells and heart cells and kidney cells? What happens? Liver cells. What happens then? Eye cells, brain cells. What happens then when your body's trained to attack cells? And you came up with this in less than a year, and it's been fast tracked to the front of the line, and you want black folks to take it first? When young black people aren't dying from this like that. We talk about it. The stats show. So I pulled the numbers again. As of December 1st, according to the CDC, there were about 320 some odd thousand cases of COVID, 320,000 deaths of COVID out of like 20 million people who tested positive, of those who tested, right? So 20 million positive tests. How many other people were positive without being tested? But everybody who died gets a test to see if they had COVID after they died. And so you know everybody who died with COVID, but you don't know everybody who had COVID because not everybody who had COVID was tested and showed positive, all right? So the numbers are a little off, but of 20 million people who had COVID that we can confirm, a little over, 300 million who had COVID, there's a little over 18 million who have died with it. 18 million who have died with it, bro, it's like 80% of them were over 65 years old. It's just that far off. The number of people who have died, like 15 to 24-year-old, that demographic, I think there's been fewer than 1,000 of them who died out of a population of 50 million. There are 40 plus million kids in that age group, and fewer than 100 of them have died. Fewer than 1,000 of them have died from COVID. So it's not like COVID is killing us. It's the pre-existing conditions that we have when COVID attacks us that we can't sustain. And the Department of Health and Human Services, the Minority Division, released some data, and it says that about 50%, over 50% of African-American women, and just under that of African-American men, are overweight or obese. And when you look into that, when you look into the linkage between being overweight and obese, and then the downstream effects of diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, And those things lead to heart disease and stroke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're dealing with those ailments, and you have, you're weakened, you're compromised already, and now something like COVID comes on you. Your body's been taxed too far in order to be successful in fighting a disease that COVID when it hits you. So the trick, I don't think, for me, if you ask me if I'm taking the vaccine, if you call eating right fruits and vegetables, herbs and sea moss and
that's your vaccine.
and bladder, yeah, if you call that a vaccination, then yeah, I'm a vaccinated.
That's your vaccination.
And if you think I'm letting Bill Gates figure something out and throw that in my office,
IT guy.
Microsoft,
yeah,
you got another thing coming. I'm not with it, and I don't know why they've given it to kids. And here's the other thing: why are we giving it to our first responders first? Why? Think about this. This is just dumb strategy. Why would you give it to the doctors and the nurses first? If it's wrong, if it's broken, who are we gonna bring the sick people to?
Because they believe it works. Okay, so they're thinking, let's take care of the folks that take care of the sick people. So you're right. If it doesn't work, we taking out the people that's supposed to save the people. So what are we doing right now?
What sense did that make?
So, so you're saying they should give it to people in prison first?
No, you give it.
Pigs.
Well, the elderly, I think, deserve, if it works the way it's supposed to work, the elderly deserve it first, because what it does is it doesn't make you immune to catching COVID. It makes you less likely that COVID is going to take root and flourish in your body. So you won't get the symptoms of COVID, even though you may become COVID positive. So the elderly, 85 and over, it's taking them out like that. The next group beat down by them is the 70 plus and over. They're getting taken out like that. And then the next group is the 60 plus and over. Once you get below 60, once you get below 64 years old, it's like less than 10%, 20%.
We both know people our age and younger that have caught it and survived it. I mean, both of our children. And
That's right.
I have friends that are in their 50s like me that have survived it. So you bring up a good point. So I'll share this with you. So as it relates to COVID and the vaccines, COVID in general. So last night I went to an event. So I was leery to go, but it was a comedy show here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And the person told me, hey, Pat, this is the headliner. He's going to be here. I got VIP for you, but you have to get a COVID test. Once you get here, it's a rapid response. We have the results in like 3 minutes. If you're good, you get full access to the green room, and we're going to go to a karaoke spot. So I got a COVID test. That's my third one. I got a COVID test last night at Atlanta, at a comedy club here in Atlanta. Right. So it was done. I felt good because with this COVID, it could be like a little bitty scratch at the back of your throat. You're like, I got it. Yeah. I think I got it. You don't know. Right. So my throat was itching 2 days ago, and I'm drinking like some tea and stuff. So I was like, sign me up for that. Yeah, right now, sign me up.
And you still went out. My throat is itching, but I'm gonna go to this club anyway. I think I might
get tested. But to get tested,
let me see if anybody else gets sick. That's how I'll know. My COVID test. The COVID test can't be. The COVID test can't be. Go to grandma and grandpa's house and see if they live. That can't be the test, right? That can't be the test. Let me go to the club and see how many people catch it, right? But I get your point though, right? I think that the vaccine should be given to those who are most at risk of succumbing to it.
Right.
If you have high blood pressure, if you have other ailments, but the problem is that those folks who are in those buckets are also at risk from the side effects of the vaccine. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing, man. But but now
Kenny B is not getting the vaccine. That's the short story. You are not getting it.
Well, here's the deal, though. Here's the deal. Now they're talking about employers can demand that you have the vaccine.
Right. If you want to travel, you want to leave the country.
Right.
Passport doesn't have that vaccine stamp.
If you want to get on a flight, period. If you want to get on a bus, period. You have to be able to prove something. So that's the scary part, is why are they going to these measures over something that's affecting so few people, right? And the number one age group that is killing is the age group that's beyond the average life expectancy of the country.
Right.
The average life expectancy of an American is 78 plus years old. The number one bucket of people dying is over 80 years old. So if that's the number one bucket of people dying and they're already past the average life expectancy, then is it the COVID that's causing that death, or is it just birthdays causing the death? At a certain point, tomorrow will kill you. Sleep will kill you, you know? And if you look at it just in context of how many people are actually dying from COVID versus dying from other things, more people are dying from cigarettes than are dying from COVID. And we're not, you know,
banning cigarettes.
We're coming up with a vaccine to stop the cancer. We're not doing that either. Smoke your ass off. Here's a shot. And now you're good. So secondhand smoke kills more people than people who died of COVID with no other comorbidity factors. So, so that tells me that it's not so much of a point of concern as much as what's really going on here. And we still live in the country that, oh, this so many years later, they wouldn't do that again. But these folks, man, gave smallpox to the Indians for a reason. They gave it to African Americans in the 20th century for a reason. What were they doing in North Carolina just a few years ago before it got busted? They were sterilizing the women in prison for tests, scientific tests, doing that without them knowing. This is just a few years ago. This is in our lifetime. And now this same group is saying, no, don't worry about that. Forget about all the other stuff. Johnson & Johnson is one of the companies that's one of these chemical companies, right, that makes these medicines. But they've got lawsuits on right now for giving people cancer through the talcum powder. Because talcum, where does that, when you get talcum powder from the earth, right? Guess what it sits right next to?
What's that?
Asbestos. So
are you serious?
Yeah, they're found together. So that's what the problem is. So they're found together. And so people are putting asbestos all over their baby, all over their body. And these,
for years,
these chemical companies know this. They know all the side effects. Their mission is to turn a profit. Their mission is to turn a profit. So if they can guarantee themselves X number of dollars times 300 million citizens, come on, man. The other countries in the world ain't rushing to have Pfizer give their people shots and all that other kind of stuff. In Africa, they don't even have COVID breaking out like that. Why?
Their numbers are really low, really low. Yeah.
Might it have something to do with being out in the sun and the vitamin D correlation between COVID and not surviving COVID? Heavy vitamin D. And back to that, why? How come we don't go in the sun all the time?
Or diet in general. You go back to their health. I mean, how many fat people are in Somalia? I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
But the fat ones ain't dying of COVID.
No. No.
They ain't dying of COVID, but there's plenty of Chinese there. There's plenty of Chinese there who is the China virus. Okay, if you believe that, then you believe that wherever there's heavy Chinese population, that might be a problem, and it ain't. So
Kenny,
I'm not sure if it's China virus.
Kenny, last time you saw a fat Chinese person, go. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Sumo wrestlers don't count. They're not Chinese.
Right. And that's Japanese, man.
Yeah, they're not Chinese. So.
Yeah, different. But yeah, you've got overweight people everywhere. It's just, what are you overweight on? But guess what? Overweight people, no matter where they are, they're all suffering from the same conditions. Those are the ones that have heart disease. Those are the ones that have diabetes. Those are the ones that have high blood pressure. And it doesn't make them a bad person or an evil person or a dumb person or somebody to look down on. Not at all. They've been tricked into thinking that this is okay, this is acceptable. Look, we're doing it right now. A couple months ago, remember everybody was getting mad at Dr. Boyce Watkins for calling out Lizzo for promoting this body beautiful. He's like, yo, y'all nuts. That's what's gonna kill you. Are you crazy? The number one reason that we die so early is because we too big. And that's
however, what women are saying, yes, Lizzo, live your life, be happy, do you. Be a big girl, show them that you beautiful, you big and beautiful and unhealthy, and your cholesterol is like 400. You know what I'm saying?
Until COVID hits her, because COVID don't care about how many records you made. COVID don't care about how fly your outfit is, how fly your weave is. COVID cares about how fly that diet is.
But she's also young, though. She's also young, so.
But those are the young ones that are dying. Those are the young ones that are dying. Because
Oh, okay.
those are the young ones who have the high blood pressure already. The young ones who have, and I'm not saying I don't know her medical history, I don't know if she got high blood pressure or what already, but the data shows that when you have that much extra work burden for your body to carry, it
Right.
puts strain on the system and things start to fall apart earlier than later. And so when I look at the pictures, every time I see a picture of a young brother or sister who died of COVID, people put it on their Facebook. This is my family. This is how they passed away. This, that,
Yeah.
and it's like they don't. I'm not dogging them at all. They were not made aware of the danger that they were in with the body. And
Right.
not surprised. You don't see folks dying from COVID who, when you look at the picture, they look like they running every day. They look like they doing 50 push-ups and 50 pull-ups,
Right.
50 dips, and riding their bike 27 miles a day or anything of that. They don't look like that body type. They look like they're watching TV, they're eating and they're enjoying, and the food is they're abusing their bodies by mistake, unintentionally. But it looks like the food has taken over them, poisoned them, and now when a deadly disease kicks on you, you no match for it. It's like COVID can't beat nobody real. COVID ain't knocking out Mike Tyson if it was a boxer. It's gonna knock out Mike Tyson's little sick aunt. That's what we can beat. And then it runs around talking about it's the champion of the world. No, you just beating up the weaklings. And we can easily become unweak by just eating the vaccine. That's going to continue to promote eating poison, thinking poison, being poison.
Yeah.
You think you're safe, and you ain't.
So we can talk about COVID and the vaccine every week for the next probably 52 weeks. But you mentioned about young people, and you mentioned Mike Tyson. So athletes. So there's something that recently happened, and we all like to watch sports talk shows. So something recently happened where an NFL player was out socially, not wearing a mask. Tell the folks about that. What happened with him?
Yeah. So you had the young quarterback from Washington football team that went out to a club with no mask on, 24 years old, millions of dollars, and he's out partying. He's in the group that does not die from this disease. He's in the group that if they catch it, they heal from it and they keep on moving like it's nothing. He's in the group that's eating right, that's an athlete, that's in excellent shape, lungs are on point, heart is on point, brain is on point, blood is on point. They make sure of that. This is a top tier athlete. So he's out partying in the club. Pictures come out, they kick him off the NFL team. Then what do we see next? Every brother that's on one of these daggone sports talk shows got to go in on the brother. And it seems like they were going in on all black people, right? I'm watching one brother named, I think his name is Booger McFarland. First off.
Booger? What was his name?
Right, Booger McFarland on Monday Night Football. How the hell is your big grown ass with children and grandchildren running around being called Booger?
On TV.
Booger. The better Booger was a janitor. The other Booger is a Booger. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how many versions of Booger do you have to reference to figure out who you trying to be? Are you Booger from Booger Bookman, or are you Booger Nose? Which Booger?
He's on TV with a name. So let's get commentary from Booger. Okay.
And then Booger proceeds to not talk about what could uplift the black community, but how, in general, black athletes are the problem in sports. That black athletes come here and they're more worried about Instagram and they're more worried about getting their social media up, but they ain't ready on game day. Black athletes come into this league. This ain't a game. This is a business. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. And y'all coming in here acting like this, acting like that. It seems to me, and then to even go so far as to then bring up another brother, DeMarcus Cousins. He used to play back in the day. I think Boogie Cousins, that's the NFL player. There was another one, a football player named DeMarcus who played for the Oakland Raiders at the time, and signed this big $42 million contract. He wasn't right in the head. You take them kind of licks to your head from 7 years old on. I'm not surprised that folks don't think clearly. But so he messed it up. But you want to tie all this back and put it all on black athletes. And it's like they want to use these black faces and these black mouths to say things that they can't get away with about black people. But
Right.
it's acceptable when a black person says it, right? So that's what your point about why do we need black leaders? Who's a black leader? Yeah, what is a black leader? Which direction are y'all trying to lead us? Are you trying to lead us in the direction that white people want us to go in, or are you trying to lead us in the direction that black people we need to go in? And so I don't appreciate how do you.
Right. So Kenny, let's take that and let's dissect what you just said.
Yeah.
So are you saying just because his name Booger, that his opinion was given to him by the editors to say, here are your talking points? Because if you and I sitting at home and I'm like, Kenny, this dude 24 years old, he signed a contract for $15 million a year. And when, with much is given, much is required. So even at 24, this is what they say you're worth. Are you hanging out with Star Keisha at the club? Because she's 21 and she makes $12 an hour. So, or would you say, okay, so I've been blessed to be elevated to a whole nother level. There's people watching me. I have a family that I'm taking care of. So I'm going to be a little more careful. Mm-hmm. So if the NFL is saying you all should not be out without wearing a mask. So it's not just about throwing a football. It's a business and a career. So I guarantee you, if this quarterback was your son, you're going to let him know, hey, I'm proud of you, but listen, let's talk about your career. Be smart. Don't hang out with Star Keisha at the club because, it's so was that really coming from Booger, or was it coming from the executives? You present this to the black folks because it's more palatable if you say it. So I kind of beg to differ. I don't know Booger, but I'm saying to his point, maybe his delivery was off by attacking all young black men. But at the end of the day, if my son is a quarterback in the NFL, we're going to have that conversation. You cannot operate like you work at AutoZone.
Let me ask you this. He didn't have to give none of that money back. He still got the $15 million. I'm telling my son, if he got $15 million, we ain't spending $15 million at the club and in the strip clubs, all that stuff. What is this kid? How do we know this kid isn't investing his money in real estate and following up and being smart with his dough, right? That I don't have to be anybody's damn slave. I live in a city that's open. I live in a community that's open. I don't agree that I need to be quarantined, and I refuse to be quarantined. It's not illegal in this town for me to not have a mask on. So how is my job imposing more stringent rules on me than the law puts on me? How is my boss bigger to me than the law of the land? If the law of the land says I'm not breaking the law to go do something, who the hell are you? Tell me I can't do it if it's legal. So if it's illegal, then that's one thing. But if it's legal, it shouldn't be a requirement that you gotta be smart in everything you do. You're allowed to be stupid. That's how we learn.
Right.
But you don't. They throw his whole future away. It was so easy to throw his future away. How many chances did Johnny Manziel get?
Many.
Yeah.
So here's my point. So the difference is, you're right. Your company should not tell you how to live your life, tell you what you can do in your private time. But again, his company is not AutoZone. He don't grab brake calibers off the shelf and hand them people. He works for $1 billion organization that if he catches this and brings it back to the Washington football team, that's the new name, right?
Yeah.
So he's out there with Star Keisha at the strip club, and he brings something back. When he's at the huddle and in practice, they're thinking, okay, so now our whole team.
So if that was their biggest fear, they just put themselves in that position for the next 2 years. They just put themselves in that position. If he brings it back, he's gone. If he catches it, he's gone. So now he's gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get why he's done. They fired him.
Right. Yeah. And what they're doing is they're sending a message to all the other black players. Y'all better act like you're supposed to act. You better behave the way we tell you to behave. We don't care if you a millionaire. We don't care if you a centimillionaire. We don't care if you a decimillionaire. We don't care. We're bigger than you. We own you. You do this how we say to do this. Even though all the data shows that people ain't dying of it like that. Atlanta should be most dangerous place in the world to be from a COVID. We should be spiking through the roof of deaths if this was as deadly for that age group as it is. Our kid, we the open state. Folks are coming from all over the country to come party here because ain't no clubs open in LA, ain't no clubs open in Chicago, ain't no clubs open in New York.
Chicago either, no.
So you can come here, you can go to strip clubs, you can go to nightclubs, you can go to restaurants, you can live as though COVID doesn't exist. And guess what? The data shows that life is going on as though COVID doesn't exist.
Right.
He's in that group. It's not affecting them that way.
Right.
He's amongst a bunch of people who it is affecting. The rest of his co-workers are 20-something-year-olds, 30-something-year-olds in the safe zone. You know,
Right.
his coach is diagnosed with cancer. So he did represent a danger to the coach, and that was disrespectful in that way.
That's kind of important.
That is very important. But that doesn't mean that we go on television and start dogging our young kids out and making it appear like the worst thing ever happened to the sports leagues is young black athletes, when that's the best thing they got going for them is young black athletes.
All right, so two things. Part of that, so I don't know if Booger is a prior
Booger.
I don't know if Booger is a previously an athlete. So
yeah,
there may be
NFL player.
So there's some financial hate, all right, because he didn't make that kind of money when he played.
No,
not at all.
No,
So
all that. All that. Boy, if I would have been back then, I would have. And if I would have.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And you can't. And he is. So let him. And if he makes a mistake, he makes a mistake. You know, you got nightclubs open, but you take this kid's, you know, and just throw him under the bus that way. I thought it was
right. So yeah, I agree. Maybe he should not have lost his job. But okay, so you and I, we both know where you work. Okay, you have a good job, great career. Let's just suppose that you were still going in, physically working in the office a couple times a week. Mm-hmm. You don't make $24 million a year. It's probably close, but it's not quite there. Yeah. So if your company said, we're asking all of our employees just to be cognizant of what's happening, and that you, if you do go out, please make sure you're safe and wear a mask. We can't make you do it, but we strongly suggest that you at least try and wear a mask when you go out. So the question is, if they find out, hey, Kenny, we saw you out you weren't wearing a mask, they're not going to fire you. It has no merit there. Mm-hmm. However, when you're talking about these multi-million-dollar athletes, I don't know I don't know how the contracts are. I don't know if they have signed something saying, you know, for this year, this is what's required. If you do this, this is going to happen. So from a legal standpoint, if they didn't say in advance, if you don't wear a mask and you're out, you lose your job. I'm sure that, I mean, just there have to be lawyers that he got like, whoa.
Right. Like my job. Players aren't allowed to just go pick up and have a play. A lot of them are not allowed to just go and play a pickup game because we got millions of dollars invested in you. We don't want your knee to blow out. Totally understand. Those are part of the contracts. Yeah. So
I'm sure they can't just decide, okay, you're fired. So he must have known. They must have put it out there. This is required. Mm-hmm. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. This is the outcome. So I mean, I don't know details, but that's what I'm saying.
How did Cam Newton catch it? You know, how did the other players on New England Patriots catch it? There's been a bunch of NBA
Were they on video at the strip club though?
That's what I'm saying. But how are you catching it, right? So the data shows that people ain't catching it like that and dying from it at the strip clubs. Otherwise, the strip clubs would be closed down, right?
I know what happened, Kenny. With Cam Newton, when he caught it, he didn't have, because he normally has a hat on.
That's what it was.
So he didn't have his hat on.
He didn't have his veil. He didn't have his veil on. He had the hat, no veil.
With the veil, not a mask.
Yeah, he's not wearing. He wears a veil down to his knees. So, but yeah, that's But yeah, no, we know. But my point is not that the young brother shouldn't have or should have gone to the club. That's not my point. My point is that we shouldn't have brothers, older brothers, coming down on making these general statements about all black athletes in general on ESPN. You know, you're the Monday night, the biggest football show on the planet, and your name is damn Booger. Right.
Booger. Kenny B.
And you passing judgment. Yeah. What's up,
man? I'm always excited to talk about what's happening in the news, in the community. We can talk COVID, I'm sure, for easily the next 52 weeks, and we probably will, as far as updates, man. But we have so much more to discuss. Yep. If you like this content information, make sure you like and follow us at Smoke and Mirrors on Instagram, as well as Facebook. Kenny B, tell the folks something nice before we go.
Yo, y'all see my man Bernie Sanders out there still fighting for that $2,000. See him. Everybody else and gave up, quit.
Kenny, it's over.
It's done. He's still out there fighting for it. They played a game yesterday, got Republicans on his side fighting for it. Still fighting for us, even after rejected him in the Democratic convention for 2 straight years. He didn't act like Donald Trump, like a spoiled brat, and he's not acting like the other folks who lost and just, well, y'all on your own. He's still out there fighting for us. But I hope that we get not only the $2,000, but I hope folks get more like $2,000 a month. That's what's needed around here, man. So in the future, let's talk a little bit about, how this stimulus stuff is going. And take care of your teeth. Don't take your tooth money with your stimulus package with a rotten tooth in the back of your mouth and then go buy a Gucci belt. Not a good look. Your belt will look nice, but your breath it's not gonna work with it. So take care of yourself. Don't waste the dough. Bitcoin. Get down on some Bitcoin if you can. Do you know, Pat, that if you would have invested $100 into Bitcoin in March of 2010, do you know how much that $100 will be worth today?
Tell me so I can feel really bad right now about myself.
If I would have invested $100 into Bitcoin, Bitcoin was less than a penny a piece in March of 2010. I would have had 10,000 Bitcoins for $100. Today, Bitcoin is over $30,000 a piece. If you had 10,000 Bitcoins at $30,000 a piece, you'd have about $300 million today.
I'm very sad. I'm very sad right now. Thank you for ending on that note.
But it's not too late. This Bitcoin isn't going to go anywhere. If you get your hands on a Bitcoin for $30,000 today, if it takes a group of y'all to put it together to get a Bitcoin for $30,000 today, I bet you in 2030, 10 more years, that 30,000 will be worth over $1 million. It's not 300 million, but it's going to be something. So pay attention to what's going on with this cryptocurrency and start to educate yourself on this cryptocurrency. Some may ask, does the cryptocurrency taking off have something to do with everybody suddenly getting sick? Are they trying to screw the economy up because the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the bankers are losing traction and control over the economies of the world with a cryptocurrency coming in? I don't know.
Smoke and mirrors.
I'm investing. Smoke and mirrors. See you next week.